diving deep into the future today, especially how AI and tech are shaping it up, from our careers and investments to even, get this, international affairs. We've got some really interesting sources lined up, so let's jump right in.
Yeah, it's kind of wild how these things, they all seem separate, but they're actually super interconnected. You might be surprised by some of the connections we'll uncover today.
Well, let's start with what everyone's talking about AI. We've all seen those headlines, right? Some are kind of scary, about AI taking over jobs. In fact, one of the articles we're looking at today even asks, the future of AI, navigating uncertainty in the job market. So what's the reality check here? What are we really looking at?
Well, this article actually starts by putting things into perspective. It says that only about 5% of jobs are expected to be totally taken over by AI, like in the near future.
5%. Seriously. That's way less than all the doom and gloom you sometimes hear. So why is that number so much lower than what people expect?
Because AI today, while it's pretty impressive, it still has limitations. Like it can look at tons of data, write poems, even have a conversation.
Yeah, sometimes those conversations can be a little strange, to say the least.
True. But the point is, AI still has a tough time with stuff that requires, actually moving things in the real world or really complex interactions. Like imagine a construction worker on a busy job site or a surgeon doing a super precise operation. That stuff is really, really hard for AI to do right now.
So no robot plumbers coming from my bathroom anytime soon then?
Not yet, at least. But here's the thing. Though even if AI isn't replacing entire jobs, completely, it is changing the skills that are going to be in demand. That's where this other piece, navigating the intersection of AI and investment, comes in. It talks about this shift toward what it calls, get this, AI fluency.
Okay, so break that down for me. What does AI fluency even mean?
It's not really about, being able to code the next big AI thing. It's more about, understanding what AI is good at, where it kind of falls short, and how to use it well in your own specific field. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a new kind of literacy for the digital age.
So it's not about fearing AI and thinking it's going to take our jobs. It's about learning how to work with it, becoming fluent, like you said.
Exactly. Being able to adapt and wanting to learn new skills, that's going to be super important.
And speaking of adapting, let's talk about where the, as they say, smart money is going with all this. The navigating the intersection of AI and investment article. It touches on that too, right?
It does. And it's really interesting. A lot of this AI investment, it's not just about making fancier tech just because. It's about actually tackling real world problems, with healthcare and life sciences being really big areas.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, investors, they want to see their money grow, right? And solving those big global health problems, that's a pretty good way to do it.
Exactly. This big focus on using AI for discovering new drugs, for instance. That could mean finding cures faster and figuring out how to give people treatments that are specific to them. Imagine a future where, I don't know, AI helps create a drug that's made just for your genes. That's the kind of potential that gets investors really pumped.
Sounds pretty revolutionary. But then we've got this other article, right? The current landscape of venture capital. And it's painting a slightly different picture. It's saying that VC investment is actually slowing down, especially here in the US. So which is it? Is AI the next gold rush or what?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And this is where looking at all these sources together gets super interesting. On one hand, we've got this huge potential with AI, especially in areas like healthcare. But on the other hand, there's this uncertainty about where people are putting their money.
So kind of a mixed bag for investors at the moment then.
Yeah, you could say that.
Sure.
And to make things even more interesting, the venture capital article, it points out something really interesting. Apparently, the valuations for AI companies over in Asia, way higher than other places, including the U.S.
Okay, now that is fascinating. Is Asia the new hotspot for AI investment or something?
It's definitely a trend worth keeping an eye on, that's for sure. But while we're talking about AI and investments, we got to talk about this company, OpenAI. There's this whole article right here dedicated to how much money they just got.
Oh, yeah. Revolutionizing AI. The $6.6 billion funding boost for OpenAI. Now that's what I call a cash injection.
Yeah, we're talking some serious money, even for the world of AI.
$6.6 billion. That puts their value at a mind-blowing $157 billion. Just to put that into perspective, that's bigger than the entire economy of a lot of countries. I mean, this OpenAI, they must be onto something absolutely massive, right?
They've certainly got some big plans, that's for sure. The article says that a huge chunk of that money is going towards training their AI models. which apparently costs a ton of money to develop.
That makes sense. I mean, we've been talking about how AI has to like learn to do stuff. That learning process, it can't be cheap, especially on this scale.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
But here's the catch. OpenAI still has to figure out how to turn all this investment, all this money, into actual profit. They might have millions of people using ChatGPT every week, over 250 million, according to the article.
Yeah.
But turning that popularity into like sustainable income, now that's the real challenge.
It's like that saying, it takes money to make money, but in OpenAI's case, it's an insane amount of money, and it's not clear when they'll actually start seeing those returns.
And that just shows how AI development really is a long game. The article really emphasizes that investors need to be patient.
So, if anyone was thinking of throwing their spare change at OpenAI, might be a good idea to hold on to it for a bit longer.
For now, yeah, probably a good idea. Get ready for a sharp turn, though, because our next source, this one takes us from, like, the whole digital world of AI to something a little more, how should I put it, tangible.
Tangible? What do you mean? Are we talking self-driving cars? Robot assistants don't leave me hanging.
Not quite.
Mm.
We're talking about semiconductors. Now you're probably thinking, hold on, tiny computer chips, what do those have to do with all this? Well, as the article, The Unseen Connections, How Western Semiconductors Impact Russian Military Operations explains, it's a connection with some pretty unsettling implications, I'd say.
Okay, now this is where things get interesting. Semiconductors and, wait for it, the Russian military. No, that's not a combination you hear about every day.
Exactly. So here's the thing, right? Even with all these export controls and stuff, Western-made semiconductors, they're still ending up in Russian military equipment.
Wait, hold on a minute. We're talking about the same kind of parts that are probably in our smartphones and laptops ending up in weapons.
It's a super complicated issue, but this article does a really good job of like breaking down how it's happening. Basically, it goes down to the fact that global supply chains, the way these things get made and moved around the world, are really complex and often not very transparent.
Right, because these chips aren't just made in one place and then shipped straight to where they're going to be used, right?
Right. Exactly. They often go through like a bunch of different middlemen, shell companies, you name it. The article mentions Southeast Asia and Hong Kong as like major hubs for this. It's a real tangled web, so trying to figure out where these components end up, it's super difficult.
And this is where it gets ethically kind of murky, right? I mean, if these companies like Analog Devices, which is mentioned in the article, if they know their products are being used like this, well, that brings up some serious questions.
Oh, absolutely. And to be fair to Analog Devices, they do say in the article that them using their products this way is totally unauthorized, but it does make you wonder, what responsibility do companies have to make sure their tech isn't being used to, like, fuel conflict or human rights abuses?
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about something as essential as semiconductors these days.
That's a heavy question, and I don't think there are any easy answers. But it's definitely something we need to think about, especially with technology becoming more and more intertwined with
Yeah.
everything.
You hit the nail on the head. And it's not just about semiconductors and like military stuff either. This whole thing about unintended consequences, right?
Yeah.
About technology being a double-edged sword. It applies to AI too, which brings us right back to where we started.
The future and how we're all supposed to navigate it.
And figuring that out, figuring out how to navigate it all, it means understanding not just the tech itself, but also like all the ways it ripples out, across different industries, economies, even global security. It's all kind of tangled up together.
Which honestly can feel kind of overwhelming, Like, how are we supposed to make sense of all of this, let alone like actually prepare for what's coming next? It's like trying to guess where a spider web will rip when you pull on one little thread.
And, that's where I think that last article you mentioned, it actually gives us a really interesting way of thinking about all this, even if it seems kind of off topic at first.
You mean the one about the future of health monitoring, embracing smart wearable technology? I gotta be honest, I'm still not quite seeing the connection to like AI, investments, semiconductors. Help me out here.
Okay, so on the surface, right, it's about this new health tracking ring, this O-ring 4.
Mm-hmm.
But think about what makes this new version different. It's like super discreet, even kind of stylish. You'd barely even notice it in everyday life.
Oh, you're right. It's kind of like how AI is starting to blend into the background of so many things we do without us even realizing it,
Exactly. And that's where it connects to the bigger picture. That seamless integration, it's not by accident, it's by design. Just like how that O-ring 4 wants to give people more control over their health data without like interrupting their lives, other technologies, AI included, they aren't just things that happen to us, We have a say in how we adapt to them, how we use them, and ultimately how we shape the future we want to actually live in.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. It's not about just sitting back and watching it all happen, being like swept along with the tide of tech changing everything. It's about actually paddling, being
Yeah.
a part of it.
Exactly. And this goes back to what we were saying before about like venture capital needing to be strategic, companies needing to adapt, everyone needing to like really get what's going on in the world. The same goes for AI, but on a personal level. You know what I mean?
So it's not just about freaking out that AI will take our jobs, but more about like looking at how we can use it to create new opportunities, come up with new solutions, maybe even whole new industries we haven't even thought of yet.
Now you're getting it. Remember AI fluency,
Yeah.
the thing we talked about. It's not just about, the techie stuff. It's about wrapping your head around what this technology can do, where it kind of falls short, and how to use it in smart ways in all sorts of situations.
It's like AI isn't the finish line. It's more like the starting line. Like any powerful tool,
Hmm.
right? You can use it to build something good or you can use it to, well, to wreck things. What happens depends on us, the humans, using it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And that is why making these connections, seeing how like AI, investments, global supply chains, even something like a health tracking ring,
Yeah.
how they're all related, that's super important. When we get how these things affect each other, we realize that the future of AI, it's not set in stone. It's being shaped right now by decisions being made everywhere, from governments and big companies right down to the choices each of us are making, what we're learning, what we're investing in, even how we're choosing to like interact with all this technology. It all makes a difference.
It's funny. We started this whole deep dive trying to figure out what the future holds, but it seems like the more we dig into it, the more questions pop up.
And honestly, that's what makes it exciting. It means we're not at the end of the story. We're still writing it. It's like a blank canvas just waiting for us to make our mark.
And to run with that metaphor for a sec, we're not just holding the paintbrushes, right? We're choosing the colors, mixing the palettes, figuring out what kind of masterpiece we want to create.
I love that. It really sums up how much power we have in shaping the future, even with all the unknowns out there.
It really is kind of empowering when you think about it that way. At first, I'll admit, all this talk about AI, global supply chains, all that, it felt kind of big, kind of scary.
Oh, totally. It's easy to feel like you're just along for the ride, especially with all the hype and headlines we see everywhere.
Exactly. But now I'm starting to realize it's not about just like trying to guess what the future holds. It's about actually making it happen. And that's way more exciting.
100%. It reminds me of this quote, something like, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And, we might not all be like coding AI or anything,
Yeah.
but we can definitely be a part of figuring out how it's used, how it becomes part of our world.
That's a great point. Like, take the job market, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, AI might automate some jobs out of existence, but that also means there's going to be room for completely new kinds of jobs we probably haven't even thought of yet.
Exactly. Or it could mean finding cool new ways to use the skills you already have, but in a world where AI is everywhere. Like maybe you're a writer, right?
Sure.
You could use AI tools to come up with even more creative stuff. Or maybe you're a teacher and you start using AI learning platforms to make each student's education more personalized. There are tons of possibilities.
And as for investments, well, maybe it's not just about chasing the next big thing, but about thinking long term, putting your money behind companies that care about the things you care about, like whether that's sustainability, making sure AI is developed ethically, or something else entirely.
Absolutely. We've got way more power than we think to steer where technology goes just by choosing where we put our money.
Yeah.
And hey, let's not forget about pushing for transparency, making sure these companies developing all this powerful tech are held accountable.
It always comes back to that idea of actually having a say, doesn't it? We're not just bystanders in this whole tech revolution thing. We're active participants shaping the future, whether we realize it or not.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Every choice we make, from the tech we use every day to the companies we support, it all goes towards building the kind of future we want to see.
So to everyone listening, just remember, the future isn't set in stone. It's being written right now, and you've got a hand in writing it.
Well said. Stay curious and never forget.
Mhm.
You absolutely have the power to make a difference.
And on that note, that's a wrap on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those big questions, and keep shaping the future you want to see.